This program is brought to you by Medical City, the Neely School of Business at TCU, and Community Trust Bank. Welcome to Platforms, the life-lifting news program for women. Now, here's your host, Siobhan Palmer.
Hey, welcome back everybody to Platforms, the life-lifting news program for women. Continue our conversation today with the actress, singer, philanthropist, Miss Ruta Lee. And when we went to break, Ruta, you were telling a fabulous story about Mr. Frank Sinatra, so I'll let you continue.
All right,
here.
so Frank is having a bunch of people at the house. They've had a big Italian dinner. He happens to have formed a partnership with a man named Howard Koch. Howard I'd worked for many times in westerns and things at Warner Brothers. And they're running witness for the prosecution. And Frank says, Howie, I've been seeing this Ruta Lee dame on television a lot and everything, and she's an interesting chick. What have we got? Well, let's put her in one of the upcoming pictures we're going to do. Frank Sinatra
Died and gone to heaven,
never
right?
knew that it was because of Frank Sinatra that I got witness for the prosecution, which got me to be his leading lady in Sergeants 3. It's a press agent's dream story, isn't it?
And he was just a powerful presence, as it's been reported. When he walked into a room, he had that kind of energy.
He and the guys played such pranks on each other, such craziness going on.
As part of the Rat Pack, him and Dean.
Yes, and the amazing thing was, it is true that he would say to the crew, I don't care if it takes you 3 weeks to set up this shot, get the lights, do the thing, but I don't want to hear when we're in to do the shot that the camera creaked or that a light blew or that something happened. I don't want to hear that. I want it perfect. We'll give you one take.
Wow. Maybe
Maybe he'd give them 2. But it was a nice way to work.
Yeah, that's why I call him the chairman, right?
Yes.
As a young starlet, I mean, you're amongst all these Hollywood icons. What were you ever overwhelmed by meeting somebody? I know that Debbie Reynolds and Audrey Hepburn, and that whole era was such a romantic time in Hollywood. Was somebody that you met that you remember, they almost took your breath away? Obviously, Frank Sinatra was one of them.
Frank did, and I'll tell you who else did that I fell madly in love with, John Wayne. You see, I like bigger than life people, being one myself, you know. He was just darling, and we were on the campaign trail. It was the Nixon era, and we were in Washington, and he would literally just sort of pick me up and carry me through a crowd, you know, which was
put you under his arm.
So thrilling, you know. And I learned something very interesting from him. He didn't take time to sign everybody's autograph. He carried a handful of pre-signed things and doled them out.
He's smart, man.
Oh, was that smart. What a great way to go. I'll tell you, one of the most overwhelming experiences that I had, though, was when we were shooting Sergeants 3, we were up in Kanab, Utah, and every week we'd fly down once or twice because the boys each one of them was playing the Sands Hotel while we were shooting. So we'd go up for the opening and the closing. Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra was having a birthday party for Dean Martin. And all of Hollywood had been invited. Now, I'm in my little cotton dress because I was up in Kanab, Utah. What did I know that I was going to be, you know, needed to be in my spangly stuff? And I'm invited to come down and join the table. And it's filled with the stars of Hollywood. And Elizabeth Taylor was then married to Eddie Fisher, and she's sitting at the table, and I'm sitting with Milton Berle over here. And in walked Frank with Marilyn Monroe.
Whoa.
Now, I've got to tell you, Marilyn Monroe had a glow about her that put Elizabeth Taylor in the dark. I never thought that I would see that, where Elizabeth Taylor was not the beauty at the table. And it's not that Marilyn was so beautiful, but there was just an aura about her. You know who else had that? All the Gabor girls.
Oh, yeah, Ava Gabor and Zsa Zsa.
All the Gabor sisters had that wonderful thing. When I first met Jolie Gabor, the mother of the Gabor sisters.
The mama of the Gabor sisters.
She was married to a man much, much, much younger than herself. And she would say to me, Ruta, darling, you look just like one of my daughters. I love you, darling, I love you. And I said, Jolie, how is it that you married Edmund? You know, he's so much younger. And she says, oh, Ruta, darling, I love him from the day Jaja brought him home from school. Isn't that fun?
Oh my God, oh my God.
Now there are girls whose estrogen level was always
Big
good.
time,
Yeah.
big time. Let's talk about, there was a remarkable, as an actress, and when we're reading your biography, you had a beloved grandmother. I'm going back to Lithuania. This story is remarkable. You actually contacted the Soviet government to get your grandmother. Why don't you tell this story, Ruth?
Well, I had been trying from the time I was in high school, because I was the first person to become a citizen of the United States. So therefore, I could make out what was then demanded by the Soviet Union if you wanted any communication with your relatives, to make out a vizov, which meant a letter in Russian, Lithuanian, and English, all of which had to be stamped and approved by every entity. The communists loved ribbons and stickers.
Yep.
And so you had to have your letter notarized, then the city seal on the notary seal, then the state seal on the city seal, then the State Department seal on the state seal, and you sent this whole package now, these 3 letters is now this thick,
Right.
to the Soviet Union. Your relative would take it to the local commissar, who would look at it, say, "Niet," and 6 months later you had to go all over again
whole
because it expired. I'd been doing this like for 12 years. And finally I got word that my grandmother and her family, who had been deported to Siberia, were permitted to come back, some of them that survived, to Lithuania. And she was living up in Klaipėda, where our beautiful engineer is from. And she was, we didn't know if she was alive or dead, because you got letters with pieces blacked out or cut out,
Yeah.
because that's the way it was.
Right.
And it took maybe 3-4 weeks for a letter to get to us, so I had no idea. But she was saying her goodbyes and thanking us for all the packages we sent, and the monies that we would roll up into seams and things and send, you know. And so my mother was in a spate of tears. I was just crazed because it was my last remaining grandparent,
Right.
and I would never meet her.
Right.
So I went out with friends that night, and the more wine I drank to drown my sorrows, the more logical it became that I should pick up the phone, call Khrushchev, and get permission to go in and see my grandmother.
Of course.
You see,
Of
it
course.
takes a little courage like that, liquid courage. And so at something like 2 in the morning, when I thought, okay, the
Time
stores are
difference.
open over in the Soviet Union, I placed the call. And in those days, oh my dear friends, oh, those good old days when you could make a person-to-person call, and if you didn't get them, you didn't pay. So I made a person-to-person call to Nikita Khrushchev, and the operator said, "How do you spell Khrushchev?" Well, hell, I can't remember where the C's and the K's and the H's are. And I said, "Nikita Khrushchev, the Kremlin, Moscow, USSR." We went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth with
Some
operators.
chick in Brooklyn, yeah.
Exactly, you know, and not getting through. And by now I'm calling the embassy in Washington, the Russian embassy, and I'm getting niet, niet, niet from everybody. And I've talked from the cook to the gardener to, you know, the floor polisher, and I'm getting niet, 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 niet. Finally, I get a call back from Moscow. "Mr. Khrushchev no speak it English. You speak it with Mr. Vorishov. Vorishov interpreter for Mr. Khrushchev." And I remembered that my father used to laugh when the interpreter, Khrushchev's banging a shoe,
Yeah.
and the interpreter would make everything that Khrushchev said palatable for our American ears, right? And I said, "I'll take a chance. I'll talk to him." I talked to him, and he said, "You know, why don't you talk to your congressman?" And I said, "What in hell does my congressman have to do with traveling in your country? I need permission to come in, and what's more, I want to bring my mother and father, who have not been to Lithuania in 35 years since they left." He said, "Present yourself again in 30 minutes to the Russian embassy in Washington. I thought, oh,
Here we go.
here we go
Right.
again. You know, I've already played this game. I called. This time I got connected to the first secretary, who was Lithuanian.
There you go.
Who later turned out to be the State Department of Lithuania. Fabulous man. And long story short, within 48 hours, my papers were done, sealed, and we were on a plane.
You and your folks went over to get your grandmother.
And as we were, you had to go in through a gate city. You couldn't just fly to Lithuania. You had to go in either through Moscow. That's it, through Moscow. And so we flew in, and as we're flying over Lithuania, I'm thinking, oh my God, are they going to shoot us down? What's going to happen here? It was an amazing story. And then we finally got to Lithuania, and we found my grandmother, who had been magically transported by ambulance from where she had been told, go home and die, you're going to die, to a hospital in Kaunas, which is the other big city. And that's where we found her. And the entire hospital was in a state of tears when we arrived. These visions from another world. Everybody in Lithuania was in black or dark blue or dark green or gray, and there we were in light furs and
This Hollywood starlet,
Hollywood
her parents.
something exactly coming in. I mean, we were a sight to behold, you know, to these people. And 6 months later, I went back to Lithuania on my own, directly from having played Molly Brown here at Casa Manana for the
unsinkable
first time.
Molly Brown, yeah.
And I took Molly Brown's courage with
That's
me.
the irony of it, yeah.
And I went on my own this time, without everything prepaid and rearranged. They allowed me to come in on a different visa. And it was a frightening experience because I don't speak Russian. I do speak Lithuanian, but not Russian. To have to go through all of that.
channels.
And the Lithuanians welcomed me with open arms, but the Russians were very cold and hostile and all of that stuff. But I was able to go back and get my grandmother, bring her here. Now, mind you, she had been 12 years in Siberia, dropped off in the middle of nothing, allowed to sleep in a barracks, you know, and they had to forage for whatever they could get. It's an amazing story, how she hitchhiked across Siberia, sitting on trucks that had rolls of carpet and whatnot, trying to find other members of the family. It's just amazing
The
what these
fortitude
people
of-
have
yeah.
gone through, and we Americans are so blessed and so lucky to have what we have, and we don't cherish it.
We need to, yeah.
We don't cherish it. The people that cherish it are the ones that came from hardship in other
immigrants.
places.
Absolutely.
To come here to live in the land of dreams, the land of opportunity, this God-blessed land, you know. And when she got off the plane here in the United States, she dropped to her knees, kissed the ground that she walked on, and said, "Hello, America." Ooh,
Amazing.
it touches me every time because I am so awed by the love that foreigners have for our country that we who live here don't cherish.
We're to hold that thought.
I will.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Siobhan Palmer with Platforms, Life Lifting News program for women. We'll continue our conversation in just a moment.